from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. It's John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Last Friday, CNN put out an article on their website called "The Definitive Ranking of 2020 Democrats." It has Biden first, Warren second, Harris third, Gillibrand fourth, and Bernie fifth. I'm going to make my case for Bernie.
Even
Bernie
though
won
CNN
22
put out the definitive.
Did Chris Cillizza write that list by any chance?
Yeah, Cillizza and Harry Hinton.
Well, there you go.
They're involved. Yeah, so Bernie won 22 states and Democrats abroad, including double-digit electoral college states like Michigan, Washington State, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. He also came within 3.2 points of Clinton and 7 other states, including Illinois, Massachusetts, and Missouri. He won 46% of pledged delegates and received 13,206,000 votes. In the last 3 polls versus Trump, he's leading by an average of 12 points. But the most important factor is the commitment that his followers have towards him. He is the dominant candidate on the left, and as much as I admire Elizabeth Warren, she did not propose as much of an aspirational agenda like Bernie did. Like Harris, Gillibrand, and Booker, she followed his lead. And while I welcome a commitment to Medicare for all, the fight for 15 and free college tuition, I wonder if they're going to remain committed to these issues like Bernie is. Bernie was the candidate who led his way on these policies, and it's important for his campaign to emphasize that they are following his agenda.
All right. Well,
Okay.
Let me just give you my sense of this. All right. I mean, I think there's no lack of support for Bernie I mean, I think around these parts and on the in our audience. I'm sure other candidates have support as well. There's a couple of things that when we're sitting here analyzing this stuff, it doesn't matter really what CNN writes in terms of what is the definitive whatever. Though it may influence, people going in. It sounds like Joe Biden has more or less said he's going to run. There's a couple of different thoughts out there. All right. One is all the things that you stated about Bernie Sanders in the last race, all of his support could end up being a bit of a liability, right? Because Bernie Sanders is not just running against the 5 or 10 people who may end up running for the primary in 2020, assuming he runs, which I don't think is a guarantee. I think he's preparing to run. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to run. But assuming he runs, he's not just going to be running against the people around him. He's going to be running against himself from 2016. And so you got to look at that as it can cut both ways. He on day one, he's going to have more support and more of an infrastructure because he ran before, but he's also going to have that potential liability. It's a double-edged sword. He's losing support, let's say, for instance, in New Hampshire. Okay, now he may change his strategy, may go down towards the south, south, do something different. But I'm looking at a piece in Newsweek from a month or two ago saying Biden's popularity is going up and Bernie Sanders is going down a little bit. There's a certain inevitability with that, but people, you got to keep that in mind. So it's silly to say who is in the lead at this point. I mean,
Can I just?
I also think Joe Biden is not a particularly good candidate in the primaries, but
he's probably. I mean, I think he's actually quite effective in the general. But regardless of that, I do have to say, and I like Elizabeth Warren, so I'm not really trying to pick a fight with her. But even now, like, and Eric Levitz had a piece specifically with that comparison of like, why would you do write-ups where Warren is, sort of ahead of Bernie in this sort of horse race stuff? That's just supported by nothing empirical. He's got a higher national rating than she does. He has a higher state rating than she does. Like, He's just objectively more popular than she is and has more
Right.
influence. Now, that might change, but I think when you're writing pieces where you're just like asserting something that is just totally contrary to every piece of available evidence, that does smack of a
There's
bias
no
against
data.
him.
There's
Yeah.
no data, of course. And, now, if you did a piece in 2013, right, about who's going to win the 2016 election, it would be Hillary Clinton.
And I think
Clearly
Bernie
has all
yeah.
the, so,
and Bernie
I mean,
would have argued even later on, don't we? Or isn't it well established that he was waiting on Warren in 16?
I think so. And so, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think there's so much time. And clearly the candidates, that it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it could cut both ways. I think Warren and Bernie Sanders are the front runners in one track, but you don't know if it's just too early to say. It's too early to say. There's going to be a very strange dynamic because there's going to be a lot of people running in the Democratic race, and there's going to be, there could be second order folks like a Sherrod Brown, who may have some attributes that may work, in a general that wouldn't necessarily work for Bernie Sanders. I just think it's too early to tell.
And don't forget, corporate media has a bias. They have a certain political bias. They're going to do everything they can to make Bernie look like an unviable candidate. They tried to do it to Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, and look what happened. So that's why you just got to keep listening to the Majority Report.
And maybe not call into C-SPAN so much, John.
Every time you call into C-SPAN, there's several articles
Look at what
about
happened.
Bernie that are biased against
You call
him.
into C-SPAN. Do we have the other one? John, I appreciate the phone call. Thank you, buddy.
Okay.
All right,
All
talk to
right.
you
Sure
soon. Bye.
thing.
You have a wonderful day, bro, and I'll see you again soon.
Can we play the other call that went into C-SPAN? Do we have that? Do you know what I'm talking about? There was another, John started some type of trend where callers into this show decide hey, why should I wait on the phone? Why should I sit around when I can just call in to C-SPAN and, have run of the place? Pretty offensive stuff, if you ask
Frankly,
me.
not the loyalty that we're calling for.
Yeah, it's a little bit disturbing to see these type of things cropping up. Do we have it? It's pretty...
That sent me the other when this I had forgotten about those C-SPAN call-in shows until John did that. It sent me down a rabbit hole the other night of compilations of people prank calling C-SPAN.
All right, here is the call. It's pretty upsetting, and I think longtime listeners of the show will probably get pretty upset as well.
That's line. Stephen, go ahead from Washington State.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. So every time this president opens his mouth, it sounds like he's about halfway through a stroke. He's the dumbest person I've ever heard. And on top of that, you get the bonus of him being a racist and cozying up to Putin. And I'm just wondering, on a scale of 1 to 10, how embarrassed you are to be a Republican right now.
I'm not embarrassed to be a Republican.
There you go.
Wait, does that
Wow.
dissident peasant who
Can't
put
believe-
together that?
Can't believe C-SPAN edited that in there.
That was weird that they would have done that, but that, of course, was
Oh
Ronald
man,
Reagan.
look at that sad cucked face.
We, I think, according to the Majority Report bylaws, we do allow our regular callers an opportunity to call in to C-SPAN once a month. Once a month. That's fine. All right, let's get to.